I still think we need to get some jingle music to intro us, because this just going straight into it is. What do you reckon, Dan? Improv? Give us a intro. You're on mute, Dan.
Probably for the best.
All right, I'll do it.
Put me on the spot, and you're the musician as well, so you get your little keyboard out and give us a little.
I mean, that will take a moment. I'll just do my Avalonia Rockstar. There we go. So that's our new jingle. If someone can splice that and send me the MP3, we'll make sure that's in on every episode. Cool. So this is, I guess, episode 2, if we're episodic, of the community Q&A. The opportunity for community members to speak to us, give us their feedback, ask questions. No question too difficult, and we will try our best to answer. So yeah, make sure to ask your questions in the chat. I know I spotted some a few days ago that don't appear to be in there anymore. I'm not sure if YouTube's deleted them or if they've just disappeared. But let's start with the easy question of how are you guys?
I'm good. We've been pretty busy since 11.0 release, so it never stops. But yeah, good. Busy, good.
All good here. And you, Mike?
Wonderful. Slightly hot. The humidity is just otherworldly. But yeah, good. And as Dan said, it's been super busy. We finally got V11 released. It's GA. Adoption of that seems to be going really well. People seem to be happy. So that kind of slog of a year of engineering from you guys has paid off, and we can focus on new things. So let's start with some of the questions. So beyond Angel 6 tutorial series, there isn't really a good tutorial series for beginners like me. Will you make a tutorial series for noobs like me? It's a great question. And it's actually one that I've been thinking about for a while. I wrote a proposal that I shared with the team a couple of weeks ago. I've got it here on my desk. It has a whole host of confidential notes written all over the front of it. I'll try and do my best to show. But the idea is Avalonia University. We're not going to open a school. There's going to be no freshers. I don't know if that translates to international, but it will be online training. A very modest fee, and the idea is to create a guided learning path to take you from knowing absolutely nothing about cross-platform development in general to being an Avalonia expert, and also at the end of it having optional certification so that you can do a test and then demonstrate to the world that you are in fact an Avalonia expert. It's quite a long proposal in terms of all of the details that I go into with it. The team seem happy for it. I don't think we've got the resources to create the content at this minute, but yeah, we're keenly aware that we need to improve the opportunity for people to learn Avalonia, because we want to grow the community. So yes, we are thinking about that, but there's nothing yet.
In terms of what's available right now, obviously there's Angel 6's tutorials, there's our documentation. There are many other blog posts that you can find on the web where people have demonstrated various techniques and ideas. So there is a lot of material out there, but we're working to improve it. And if you are very, very new to like XAML frameworks and MVVM, even finding a good WPF tutorial is going to get you quite a long way. If it's really like learning the basics, there's loads of those around.
Yep. Oh, the chat moved. I was going for this one. Hi there, love Avalonia. What's the state of accessing device APIs on mobile?
So right now you can, is it .NET 7? Yeah, from .NET 7, you can make your application, your project target .NET 7-iOS or .NET 7-Android. And that means you can call directly from C# all of the Android APIs or all of the iOS APIs. So that's one approach. And other people have also tried using like the Xamarin Essentials NuGet package, and maybe it's now Maui Essentials, but that's possible. And we've actually got a fork of Maui Essentials that we're looking to bring. So rather than you having to implement those APIs or your calls to those APIs, a version for Android and a version for iOS, that gives you like a single API that you can use that translates to both. So that's what's possible now and what's coming there.
Yeah, the Maui Essentials fork is a curious one. The Maui team, John Dick, reached out and said, we don't want to split the ecosystem. We should be working together on it. But just from a naming perspective, I think that it makes it difficult to collaborate on that. If it was called .NET Essentials for mobile or mobile.NET Essentials or something that was agnostic to Maui, because it has, I think, almost no dependencies on Maui, then it would be much easier to justify collaborating on that. But given the naming alone, I think we'll probably keep our fork and run with that. And also, when we talked about the additional platforms, because obviously we support web and Linux, which aren't targets for Maui, and would those PRs, if we submitted them, get merged? There was some kind of ambiguity, and I don't see the point in having a cross-platform Essentials library that doesn't cover all of the platforms that we support. So, yeah. So there's a lot of mobile questions today. That's quite interesting. Are there any resources on how to deploy and debug mobile apps?
We do have some documentation on our docs. Just trying to find it now, but there is some, and it could be that some of the information there needs a little bit of updating. But we do have, if you search for iOS and Android there, I believe there should be something. It may be still only in the version 10 docs. Let me have a look. Yeah, if you go to the version 10 docs, it's definitely there. Let me see if it's on version 11.
But in general, the experience for deploying and debugging mobile apps is the same as what you would have if you were building a traditional Xamarin or Net iOS, Net Android app. Forget about Maui, but just like the vanilla Xamarin native experience. So it works the same because we're built on top of that. We did a couple of months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, 2 months, demo on Twitter a new approach to building for Android, which was significantly faster than using Xamarin.Android, but we've not released that. So the experience right now is if you go and look at the Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android docs, that is all applicable to building an Avalonia app today.
Yeah, it's if you go on our docs, click on how to guides, then platforms, and then Android. It's got everything there, and alternatively, next to Android, you've got iOS. So if you click on there, it gives you all the information, how to set up your environment, how to deploy, how to run. Yeah.
So the next question is the Windows subsystem for Android usable?
Never tried it myself.
I think I saw someone playing around with it. I'm not sure either. Isn't the subsystem for Android only available in the US or is that just the store that's
I know
via Amazon?
initially it definitely was the case. It may have changed now, which is probably why I haven't had my hands on it.
Yeah. I also don't use Windows as my day-to-day OS, so that's kind of a limiting factor for me. Stephen, you're an animal. You have Android, and you use a PC, so this should be right up your street.
I have no idea. I've barely been involved with the mobile support, which is why I'm remaining quiet.
We'll put it on our to-do list to have a look at that.
Yeah.
Get somebody to try it. Sounds like it should be possible.
So another question is, what are the next milestone features you are working on?
I can answer that.
Yeah, please.
Finally, something I know about what I'm working on. My main big task that I'm working on right now is refactoring the binding system. We have various problems with spurious warnings appearing. We've had requests from people to be able to update bindings manually by calling refresh binding. We don't have the, what's it called? Update source trigger property. Various issues with bindings and limitations with bindings. And that all basically is because the binding system comes from version 0.1. It's been added to since then, and it's kind of a real mess. So I'm working on tearing all that out and starting from the bottom with these features in mind. So hopefully improvements to the binding system coming up from me.
I know one of the other things that Nikita has planned, not sure exactly the timescales, but the new composition renderer, there's plans to extend it to do things like effects, blurs, and some of the animation APIs that people have already started trying, and just to add more capabilities around there.
Yeah, we were talking earlier today about V12, and we've only just shipped to V11. But one of the things that I think we're in agreement about is that V12 will be sooner than. So we're going to reduce the window that our typical window for releasing. So it will be released sooner and with fewer breaking changes. I would like to say 0 breaking changes, but it will probably have a handful. But the idea is that V11 was a huge amount of work for us, so it was setting that foundation on which we can build off now. So we've built the stable API. So there'll be lots of features in the future, but we're very keen to minimize breaking people's applications and taking 2.5 years to get to the next release. We want to. If I had a magic wand and got my way, I'd say we'd be releasing V12 next summer. It would have a handful of new features, a couple of breaking changes, and it would be a very, very easy upgrade for everyone. They would just kind of upgrade the NuGet packages and be off to the races. So next question. Will it ever be possible to use WPF controls in Avalonia? There are a lot of libraries for WPF that have no equivalent in Avalonia.
Well, we have built the technology to do this. It's based on our XPF technology. We are working with a few companies that have specific needs around that. And if that is a particular need that you have, it's something that we would be licensing for, but that allows us to fund the development of the main Avalonia framework. Get in touch, and it's something that we can talk about.
Cool. Hello, team. Thank you for the hard work. For mobile dev, what is the state of Inset Manager? It seems that it was released with its members marked as experimental/obsolete.
Yeah, so the reason why it's marked as experimental and obsolete is because we're not 100% sure that the API that we've used is what how it may end up final. So anything that's marked as obsolete or experimental doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually obsolete. It just means that we want you to know that we may rename some of the properties or change the API a little bit. I think the inset manager is part of the Avalonia labs, or is it actually in the main Avalonia now?
I think it's in main Avalonia. I'm just looking now. I can't see where it's marked as experimental, but I believe you.
So keeping on the mobile theme, coming back to Avalonia Essentials, a rough target date for Avalonia Essentials. No, there's no. It's open source. It's on our GitHub, so you can go and clone that repo and explore it. We haven't published any packages for it yet. We tentatively talked about focusing on. So we need to fill the gaps for like Linux and WebAssembly support. So I think we're going to have a start on the camera control. But I mean, to be honest, it's something, it's ripe pickings for the community to pick it up. I'd ideally love for the community to run with the Essentials package rather than the core team, because it's a good additional package, and the core team can focus on the core library.
I was actually thinking that with open source projects, it's often with a project that's very established and quite big code bases like we have, it can be often difficult for new people to start contributing. Whereas this Avalonia Essentials is essentially a brand new project. It doesn't require the same. It's a lot more lightweight, so it's a lot easier to get involved if people are wanting to get involved. That's definitely an easy place to start.
So Bunny, our good friend, has asked, can we have a basic tutorial of how Automation Peer helps with A11Y setup? So the accessibility. Accessibility.
Yes, I guess we do need one, but the API is a pretty much 100% copy of the WPF API and the same API as UWP. So I think like 99% of the documentation tutorials on how it works in those frameworks will apply to Avalonia. I'm not sure how much we can add other than just copying those docs to our docs website. That's maybe something we should do. Yeah, they're almost identical. There are a few tiny changes.
So somebody else has asked, they've asked this in a couple of different messages, so it's hard to put it on the screen in one go, but they're asking about controls like tree data grid or the data grid, and what our plan is for those in the future.
I would love to spend some more time on tree data grid. I just haven't got time. It's never, there are always other priorities. Controls like, well, data grid, the problem is that it's a fork of the Silverlight data grid and no one understands how the code works. It was contributed by a third-party contributor quite a few years back, who disappeared. So it's hard for us to work on that. And tree data grid is supposed to be the modernization of that, but it's a lot of work. I mean, to get stuff working, to get a fully featured data grid is years of work, and it's just never been a priority, especially as we were getting V11 ready. Maybe at some point in the future, I'll have a few down weeks and I'll be able to work on it. I don't know, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's worth mentioning that we are working with some Pro Control vendors that do develop very fully featured data grids and similar controls. And there may be some news soon about that.
that is a more sustainable route for us to help control vendors get going on Avalonia, I think, because it's a tree data grid is just such a huge amount of work, as I said.
Yep. We want to see more control vendors. So one of the things we've been doing is that when a control vendor reaches out to us, showing any interest in Avalonia, we immediately set them up with a complimentary support agreement, which is what we normally offer to the large enterprise customers, in order to encourage them and to help them explore Avalonia. And we've been quite successful with that in terms of getting companies to embrace building for Avalonia. So if I look at where we were a year ago in terms of control vendors to where we are today and where we'll be next year, like we're moving in a very, very good direction.
Do we have any official news that we can share about that, or do we need to wait?
ActivePro, we kind of talked about them in the V11 announcement. So they're working on some stuff that looks absolutely fantastic. I can't announce anything, but it's public knowledge that ActivePro are working. But I think apart from that, everyone else is still in stealth mode. And I love to leak, but I'm not going to leak on a stream that's forever immortalized on the internet.
We also have the Steamer T-chart in terms of third-party controls. I know that's not what you were asking about, but as well as data grid, the graphing controls are often questions that we get if anyone's interested in those. Steamer T-chart.
Yeah, and there's a load of 3D controls as well, which is really surprising. Like if you're building a 3D application and you want like Vulkan interop and stuff like that, I mean, it's all over my head, but there are various, more than expected, vendors that can supply you with controls to deal with that kind of complexity, which is super interesting. So another question is something like the WPF list view with grouping support planned?
That was supposed to be tree data grid. Again, it's an awful lot of work. I've never liked the way that the WPF tree list view works, and if you look at the code, it's appalling. Sorry, whoever wrote that. So, I mean, it's not something we'd want to copy. So my answer would be not in the immediate future. I don't think we have time. Again, all of these questions about controls and stuff, and us kind of pushing towards third-party component vendors just comes down to the fact that we just don't have time to work on this stuff. We're working on kind of the core foundational blocks and getting those to a state where other people can build on them, because you could in a larger company, a list view or a tree data grid would have a whole team working on it, and we don't have a whole team to work on these things.
If you find an open source WPF control that's similar or does something like what you need to do, people in the community have actually had, it's getting easier and easier now to port WPF controls. So even very complex controls like Avalonia Edit, Avalon Edit, it's not a huge jump to do a port on something like that. It would, if you get your head down, spend a few days, you could get things like that running.
Don't try porting the WPF list view, though. If you want to maintain some sanity.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, hey Avalonia, one of the main challenges with frameworks like Avalonia is with using native controls, putting a control on top of a native one and vice versa. Do you have specific plans for this?
Where's Nikita again? We need Nikita. I think we in the last community Q&A, and we didn't know the answer then.
We do have the controls, native control host that allows you to embed native views, and it works on macOS, Linux, Windows, works in the browser as well.
I think the whole point of this question, though, is asking about putting Avalonia controls over native controls, etc. I know Nikita's the person who works on this. I'm not sure. I think he has maybe vague plans about how to do it. Do you remember any details, Dan?
Not specifically, no.
No. Sorry, can't answer that question.
It's a very difficult one. WinForm developers have been left out in the cold, and now that Mono Develop is dead and there's no longer a cross-platform drag-and-drop designer, any thoughts on Avalonia filling that gap?
Well, Mike?
Yeah, I was. The silence there is deafening. Yeah, there is a plan. There is a plan to create a drag-and-drop visual designer that integrates into Visual Studio and Rider and Visual Studio Code, and potentially a separate standalone application as well, targeted more to designers. It's been on our roadmap since last summer, but it is a huge amount of work. And if we did it, it would be a paid control or a paid feature. We can't justify the investment in that to give it away for free. And one of the big reasons why we've not committed to just getting it built is that we are not 100% sure that there is enough demand from the community to pay for it. When we look at our GitHub sponsors, so we created the VS Code extension as a thank you to the GitHub sponsors. I was looking this morning, 74% of the applicants for that extension aren't actually subscribers or sponsors to the project. So there's a lot of people expecting stuff for free that is difficult and time consuming and expensive to build. So we kind of have to weigh up where we invest the cash that we're generating. And yeah, I'm slightly nervous about spending hundreds of thousands of euros, maybe even more, to build such a complex feature for users that ultimately won't pay because they see it as something that should be included for free because Microsoft gave it to them for free in Visual Studio. So yeah, there is a desire to do it. I would love to see it happen. A lot on the team would like to see it happen, but it has to make financial sense. And when I mentioned it to somebody in the community and I said, well, what would it be worth to you? And I think they came back with $20 a year. And it's like, it's unworkable at that kind of value. So yes, we are keen to do it, but it has to make sense.
You're talking a couple of developers for longer than a year to really do it properly.
Yeah.
But you have to remember the whole of Avalonia got to this stage because initially a few people got together and volunteered and dedicated years of work to do it. So there's absolutely no reason that another group of people in the community could band together and achieve that. So, if you really, really want it, find some people in the community and try and have a go at it and come and talk to us. We'll always help you out and point you in the right direction and share our thoughts on how it could be done.
Yeah. Again, I think we're repeating the same answer.
Yeah.
We're very busy. We can't afford to hire new teams to work on each of these features. And so either people pay for it or they make it themselves, I think, is the answer to a lot of these questions.
Yeah. So one of the questions from Dan is, how big is the Avalonia team, paid developers? So we're 10 people paid full-time working on the project. So you can get a feel for what it costs to run a company that employs 10 developers. It's not cheap, and we've bootstrapped the business, and we've not taken outside investment. So we've talked about, I think Stephen wrote a comment on Reddit again about the GitHub sponsors and how 0.02 or 0.2% of users have sponsored the project. So yeah, it's expensive.
In terms of sponsorship, we have triple figures a month, and you cannot pay for 10 developers with triple figures a month.
And that's in dollars as well, and we pay in euros.
And we play, and that includes $500 from AWS a month.
Yeah, so without the AWS, then we're like maybe $500 a month in sponsorship.
Probably not.
No,
$300 to $400 a month in sponsorship.
Yeah, which wouldn't even cover like a few days of the team's time, like if we just gave it to one developer. So yeah, the team is small, 10 people, but that's kind of why you're getting the responses you're getting here, which is, if you want it, go and build it, because the team is largely focused right now on XPF, because that's the way that we're going to build a sustainable business in the short term that allows us to build the huge business that we're looking to build in the long term, so that we can continue to create value for you guys, the developers, and make you more productive. It's step by step. Right, let's find the next question. Somebody has asked, will there be more info on how you built the VS Code viewer? Does it mean that we could build our own VS Code extension and embed Avalonia app inside? Oh. Well, so that the VS Code extension was built by Prashant, who is someone I've worked with for almost a decade now. So he was with me at Xamarin. He was recently at Microsoft working in the Visual Studio team. So we outsourced that to him. It's using basically all of the components of our Visual Studio 2022 extension. So the previewer is the same. It's exactly the same running in the main VS extension, and also for Rider as well. Same with IntelliSense or auto completion if we're not wanting to use their trademark. So it's just using a web view. So we can say that we want to render the preview to a web view. So it's pretty simple. We had all the component pieces, but we just needed someone with experience with VS Code in order to build or package it all together. So I don't know if we could build VS Code extensions with Avalonia. It might be possible to do with WebAssembly.
We have Net browser target WebAssembly, so you can run Avalonia apps inside a web page, which must be possible to embed those into VS Code, right?
I thought that the previewer actually works by running a .NET process separately and sending images back to the VS Code. So it's not, strictly speaking, embedding Avalonia inside VS Code currently, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. It's just another process sending images to VS Code.
Yep. So somebody has asked, why no update source trigger support? Will it be added at some point? Lost focus can be really useful in many cases, like for text box, where it is a default in WPF. Also would ease porting from WPF.
Yeah, I spoke about this earlier. You may have come in after I spoke about that. That's the next main feature. That's part of the next main feature that I'm working on. We should hope to see it soonish. Yeah.
What is Avalonia's main focus, desktop or mobile? Well, it's Vision OS, isn't it? That's all we're interested in now.
Essentially, in my opinion, desktop is very, very mature now. It's established. That's why we've got to 11.0. And mobile and browser is something that we really want to bring up to the same standard, to the same level, so that we can really have the #1 .NET mobile solution with managed drawn controls, and same for browser. So I think a lot of the effort that's going to be put into the framework is going to be getting the mobile and browser side up to the same level that we have on desktop. Yeah, if that answers the question. But yeah, we really see Avalonia as being able to really hold its own on the mobile and browser side as well.
Yeah, we're to add some more context to that from the business perspective. When we look at our list of potential hires in the next 6 months, we've got our eye on some very influential people that would help very much accelerate that mobile story for us. So yeah, we do want to bet big on mobile and web. And as Dan says, desktop is kind of it's already there. It's stable. It's used by huge corporations. People are happy with it. So. And then past mobile, I think, I joked about Vision OS, but I think that's an interesting platform for us to support. We were, the first .NET framework to get the screenshots out and the videos showing that we can support it and it works. I'm interested in that. I'm also interested in Chrome OS and supporting Google's drive to push Chrome OS into the enterprise. I think that's quite interesting when you think about people porting their WPF apps to Avalonia, but also Avalonia XPF. If we can take those and run them on Chrome OS, then that's quite a compelling story, and also sets us apart from other players in this space. So, is Apple Pencil supported in Avalonia iPad app, like pressure sensitivity?
Apple make pencils?
Yeah, Stephen is very much an Android user. Do you own a single Apple device?
I have a MacBook Air, yes.
Okay. Is it Intel or
M1? The hardware is great.
Yeah.
The software. If you ever have to do low-level Cocoa programming, you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. AppKit is horrible.
Yeah, AppKit. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have an iPad, so I can't answer that.
I mean, we definitely support Pencil. I've seen tests of that. I don't know if we support pressure sensitivity.
Our iPad and iOS expert is kind of Max, especially touch. Max would know the answer to this. We do have APIs that support pressure, I'm pretty sure. So in theory, it may be already working. If you ping Max on our Telegram, he's at KATZ He probably have an answer for you.
Cat0, I think.
Cat0, that's it, yeah.
I'm just taking a look at our API right now. Our pointer APIs do support pressure. So in theory, we support it. Whether we support it on that platform, I'm not sure.
I think we must do, because it's iOS and it's all touch, isn't it? So I'm pretty sure it must be supported.
Okay, next question. Can you provide examples of MVVM implementation on different platforms? I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
The MVVM part should really be mostly platform independent. So I'm not sure why you would need to implement the MVVM part on different platforms.
If I try to read between the lines, the question might be about how do I share my view models between maybe an Avalonia desktop app and a Xamarin mobile app, perhaps sharing them. Could be some situation like that.
Okay. We'll answer that question.
I was waiting for one of you guys to pop in, but okay. So you have your view models if this is the situation. Ideally, if you're an MVVM purist, you would put those view models into its own class library that doesn't reference Avalonia, or let's use Xamarin as an example, or Xamarin. So there's no dependency on any of those. You might be using a framework like Reactive UI or Community Toolkit.mvvm to give you lots of helper methods to deal with things like navigation and commands and property notifications. But because you've got them in its own class library that doesn't know anything about Avalonia, it doesn't know anything about Xamarin, all of the code will be completely portable. You would then have your Avalonia application or your Xamarin project reference that, and basically you would do all your bindings from the Xamarin side as you normally would, and you do all your bindings and commands and stuff on the Avalonia side. So you would be sharing your view models with two different platforms. But people have done that. Was that more or less right, Stephen? Did it sound right?
Yeah, if that's the correct interpretation of the question, it was a great answer.
Well done, Dan. Would you already recommend Avalonia for mobile iOS apps, or should I wait for a few iterations to stabilize? I'm burnt by .NET MAUI and the collection view / gesture recognizer bugs. Yeah, Dan, you do have a squeaky chair. Someone's commented on that. I was wondering what I was thinking. Is that me? No, it's Dan. We need to get you some WD-40.
Yeah, it might be my window shutters. The wind's blowing and they sort of squeak a little bit. Yeah, probably doesn't.
I thought it was a parrot or something at first. I think so. Mobile is one of the latest platforms that we support. So from my perspective, having done iOS development for years, at this point, I think that we're, from a technical perspective, we're there. The bits that we're missing are the stuff like the navigation controls, but you can find those in our labs project. So we've got a guy called Emmanuel that's been focused on kind of building the missing pieces for mobile. As I mentioned before, we've got this kind of dream team that we want to put together, focusing on building up our mobile support. But as the current theme of this conversation is the building blocks, the foundation is all there. It works, it's stable. There are bits that are missing, and they tend to be, as I say, stuff like the navigation control. That is like an afternoon's work to build. It's not a hugely complex thing to develop yourself, but we've got it in the labs. But yeah, so I think that if you've struggled with unstable SDKs from other platforms, we're stable. It's the same code that runs on desktop, that runs on embedded browser. Performance is fantastic. The pain that you will find with Avalonia isn't about the stability. It isn't about your app breaking for no apparent reason, or memory issues with collection views and stuff like that. It's primarily that you're going to have to do some heavy lifting to get the project set up for stuff that you would get by default with something like .NET MAUI, because they've got the UI navigation controller abstracted in a nice API for you. So yeah, I think if you ask this question in a year's time, and we've made those key hires, and we're going to be able to kind of say, yeah, it's incredible, you should totally build everything with us. But I think right now we need to be honest that I don't think we're 100% of the way there in terms of features, but in terms of stability, yeah, it's rock solid.
I was just wanting to add as well, this question kind of feeds into the native controls versus drawn controls. So with a native control framework like MAUI, if something doesn't work, or you get different behavior on different platforms, you're really stuck waiting for them to fix it. But in Avalonia, if you're missing a control, it's very easy to implement it itself. You're not going to have to go and talk to native APIs. You can just build it all in .NET and XAML, which is very easy. So that might be more time consuming, but you're not going to get to a dead end where you're absolutely stuck. And we also have gesture recognizer API, so you can actually implement your own gesture recognizers. And there's lots of inbuilt ones. So yeah, that's my...
I think part of this problem is that a lot of the controls that are missing, things like the navigation view, etc., are trivial to implement for your application, but they're difficult to implement for all possible applications. So that's the reason that ours is still in the labs, because we have to kind of try to cater to all possible uses of it. If you want to build your own, I mean, I don't know how many of those things you can do it in half a day. It's one that is specific to your app.
So somebody has asked, I would like to make something for my multiple Raspberry Pi boards. Will I be able to do that with Avalonia?
No, you can only make it for one at a time.
We actually have some really great docs on our, if you search for Raspberry in the search, pretty sure that will bring it up. But we have a step-by-step guide on how to run a sample Avalonia app from start to finish. It tells you how to make sure that the GPU is utilized so that the graphics and the UI is super responsive and it all renders nicely. I just went through that a couple of weeks ago. It took me 30 minutes to get up and running. I spent more time writing the SD card than actually doing any code. It all just worked. So yeah, and lots of people are using them for embedded devices, personal projects, and people are using them in companies. You can have a splash screen to cover whilst the OS is loading, and it's all pretty fast. You can get it very nicely optimized. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we integrate with Wilderness Lab, who was created by my good friend Brian, former Xamarin VP. He's created the company Wilderness Labs. They make microcontrollers that run full .NET. They've created something called Meadow.desktop, but there's also like a Linux variant of that where you can get a really nice API to interact with hardware, and it supports Avalonia, and there's some samples. I was out in Seattle demoing it with them, which is why I've got this Pi here. So it gives you really easy access to the GPIO whilst building your UI in Avalonia. So you should check that out. That's Wilderness Labs. So yeah, if you like embedded and Linux, it's a really good kind of collaboration between the two companies. Are there any plans to support single project to target all platforms?
I think when Microsoft support it, right? That's not really a limitation, our limitation. I think that's Microsoft's limitation as far as I'm aware.
Although I think we actually already do support most platforms in that kind of style of project. I'm pretty sure there is somebody I've seen. I vaguely remember seeing somebody post a sample.
Pretty sure iOS can't be supported like that. I could be wrong though.
I know. I think one of the problems was that there wasn't, until .NET 8, there wasn't a browser target, but you could cover many of the other platforms, especially if you were doing like desktop. I'm fairly sure.
I'm pretty sure I saw an F# example of Avalonia with F# as a single project. I might have hallucinated that though. It's quite possible.
Things have probably changed since last time I looked at it, and I do believe .NET 8 improves this. So hopefully with .NET 8.
So another question is, how comfortable is everyone in the team with the approach of drawing controls instead of using native ones like Maui? I'd love to hear more on this from the team.
We're pretty comfortable with it. We've been doing it for a while. Yeah, I mean, there are two ways to do it. They're two different paradigms. Both have their advantages and both have their disadvantages. You kind of have to choose one. We can host native controls in Avalonia. So, I mean, you could kind of do that with a lot of work with Avalonia, but kind of from its foundations, Avalonia is a self-drawn control library. So I wouldn't say one approach is better than the other. They're just different approaches. Use whichever approach is more aligned with what you're going for.
Awesome. There's so many questions and so little time, so I'll try and get through these quickly. Backlog question. As a maintainer of Prism.Avalonia, it can be difficult pivoting on breaking changes. Is there any chance that we can get proposed/preview of future changes? Anything to help stay ahead?
Yeah, there won't be breaking changes like we've just had. As I think Mike mentioned earlier, 11 was the biggest breakage we've ever had, but we did that in order to be able to do less breaking changes in future. There won't be any breaking changes over the course of 11 and 12. We hope to have so few breaking changes that most people wouldn't even notice them. There will be, hopefully, I mean, I can't predict the future. Maybe we'll have to make some bigger breaking changes, but there will hopefully be so small that unless you're doing something very particular, very advanced and very low level, you probably won't even notice them. So yeah, there should be no reason, hopefully, to get preview of future changes.
The way that we've really seen it from our side of the fence is that 11.0 was really our version 1. We're no longer in beta software, so we're really committed to maintaining stable API from now on. We really want pro controls and the community to implement libraries and controls based on Avalonia. And if we keep breaking the APIs, then we're just doing the same thing that Microsoft did. Okay, breaking the API, and you've all got to invest in a new framework. So that's exactly what we don't want to do. So we're committed to making sure that if you build a library on version 11, it's going to work for the foreseeable future.
Stability, API stability is a key feature of what we're building.
We have tooling that actually enforces it now, so nobody can accidentally break it, and we're strictly monitoring it. So yeah.
At the moment, it's hard to figure out all the different parts of how all the different parts of Avalonia fit together. Is there some contributor guide that goes over this?
I'm guessing a guide about the architecture and how the different assemblies fit together. That would be a good idea. When I started around the 0.1, if you look back, like in the Git history, there may be some document that covers this, but things have changed a lot, and we now have like 90 something projects in there. It probably would be a good idea to document those when we get time. Again, that might be something that the community can start with. Open a discussion with a list of the different assemblies, try and fill them in, and we'll correct you. And we'll add it to the docs.
Speaking of discussions, so somebody's asked about creating a dedicated forum instead of Telegram, because Google doesn't index Telegrams and it's hard to follow the discussion. So I think that GitHub discussions is really what that is. If you're not interested in being in the Telegram chat, then yeah, use the GitHub discussions, because I've talked about this before with the team, maybe creating a forum, but that's really what GitHub discussions are. They're threads. You can comment, upload media. It's everything that you would need in a forum already available within the main project. So yeah, ask your questions on there. I already see that from a lot of people, and our guys hang out there and answer. So you might get Tim, you might get Max, it might be someone else, but someone will come and answer your question, and it's much more searchable. So what about Avalonia Xamarin Forms hybrid? It would be a nice way to migrate existing apps. So not even the Maui hybrid, but a Forms hybrid. We have no plans for that. As I say, our focus is really, we talked about this on the last call, but our focus with interop with Maui or Xamarin Forms is kind of on the back burner. We're more keen to just build out our mobile offerings and provide such a decent platform for you to build on that, you may have a bit of pain up front, but once you've migrated, you'll be on greener pastures and it'll be all dandy for you. And yeah, worth going through that mild inconvenience of migrating. Right, let's.
I noticed some disagreement about the best place to put the chat. Let's not get into that.
Is this about Telegram versus Discord? Yeah, we've had this debate internally. Listen, we can move to Discord, but you're going to miss out on people like Nikita because he's not going to install an Electron app. There's not enough money in the world to get him to run Electron apps. And you ultimately want people like that hanging around and being able to answer your questions. So yeah, it's not perfect Telegram, but it's better than Slack from our experience. Discord is a memory hog, so
we did have a Discord relay, right, Dan, at one point, so you could actually use Discord and it would.
Yes, we were on the .NET Evolution Discord, and the Avalonia channel's still there, and there are still people in there. But the link to our Telegram and Gitter is now somebody kicked our bot out of there that was relaying the things, and we were lucky the first time that we managed to get hold of the right person at Microsoft that administers that, and they let us put it in, and then I think a new administrator might have come along and thought, what is this, and booted it out. And yeah, maybe we need to find the right person to talk to again to reconnect.
Anyway, regarding chat apps, I mean, there are so many chat apps. I don't know how many I've got installed on my system. I really don't want to place internally, the team uses Telegram, so that's where's most convenient for us. I mean, there is a Discord chat, but you probably won't find many team members in there. Is the only problem.
I think Jumar opens it maybe once or twice a month because he'll sometimes send me screenshots that are like 2 months old, and I'll be like, what should we do about this? It's so long ago that I think we probably just need to leave it. Another question was around getting smaller native AOT WASM files. Is it up to .NET and their trimming improvements? Uncompressed sizes are currently over 40 megs, which is quite a lot.
So what the first thing to know that is that all of the .NET UIs that use WASM, they have the same issue. And even if you look at our Solitaire example, the uncompressed size is like 17, 18 megabytes, something like that. And the way that to solve this problem is to make sure it's hosted on a server that streams the data using Broccoli compression. So that would be
compressed size, right?
Yes, but if it relies to have a workable application, it relies on serving compressed. So that means that the actual user downloads maybe 3 megabytes or 3.5 megabytes because the compression ratio is very high. But other things to look out for is make sure that any assets, fonts, images, make sure that they're cut down in size. For example, one of the changes we made in Avalonia 11 was we made it optional to bring in the full font package that come with the Fluent theme. So if you remove that and then you can put in like a lightweight web font, you can get the size down a little bit. Those are like the typical things, but absolutely having a workable solution absolutely relies on the server using Broccoli compression to serve the code.
Yeah, and I think in terms of uncompressed size, that is just down to .NET, right?
Yeah, that and making sure that you have got it trimmed as well as it can be.
Another question is, was there any idea to prioritize GitHub issues by some community votes? No.
You can add a thumbs up to them.
But that isn't going to really influence it getting fixed.
Probably not. I do sometimes look at the issues that have the most thumbs up, to be fair. But I wouldn't say I do it that often. No, I'm not going to mention that now. Ignore me.
Okay, well, I'm going to mention that we prioritize, in terms of how we prioritize fixing issues, it goes to paying customers. So we have a private issue tracker. So for our, we've got startup and premium support agreements. You subscribe to one of those and then you get priority in terms of fixing your issues, and you get direct access to the core team so that when you get stuck, you can get unblocked as quickly as possible. The stuff that gets put onto GitHub as an issue, that's, we will get around to fixing it one day, or the community will fix it. But there's no guarantees that it will ever get looked at. If you want guarantees around something's, affecting you majorly, and it's a problem for you, then our recommendation is support the project, support your development, and take out a support agreement with us, and you'll get the best possible help along your development journey. So we are basically at time, but I'm going to just have a quick scan to see if there are any other questions that we can answer quite quickly.
Oh, there's one about real-time graphs. Are we performant enough to support real-time graphs? Definitely. There's lots of people that have very high frame rate graphics and controls in their applications, and especially since version 11 with the composition engine, that was all about getting the rendering time up to 120 hertz. Some people have run it higher than that as well.
It may depend on how you're actually drawing those graphs, and there are certain techniques to certain ways of drawing that are faster than others, but we're definitely capable, yes.
Someone's asked about map control. This is an easy one. There's a UI library already. It's community led. It works on Uno, it works on Maui, WPF, WinForms, and Avalonia. It runs everywhere. So if you want a map control, go and use that. Somebody has asked about Fluent themes, so WinUI 3 look. There is a Fluent Avalonia package. I would like to update all of the themes. One of the things that I want to do for V12, which is I would like to have next summer, is a comprehensive suite of themes that come from us, so that we can give you the material and Cupertino and an updated Fluent theme. Again, it comes down to resources. Themes are quite difficult to create. The one from ActiPro looks absolutely incredible. I think when that gets released, it will be my go-to. But yeah, we do want to update the themes at some point, but it is not a priority for us, especially when the community is doing a good job of filling in that gap.
By the way, the Fluent theme, when it was originally implemented, there was a couple of people from the community popped up and started working on it, and it wouldn't take a lot of effort to make the small changes to update it to the WinUI 3 look and feel. So if there's a couple of you out there that want to team up and work on that, I'm sure
a few people of those actually ended up being full-time employees, if I remember.
Yes. It's a way in.
We definitely mentioned this on the previous call, but one of the ways that we're dealing with hiring is we take known entities. So if you want to one day work for us, get involved with the project, send in PRs, and demonstrate to us that you're a competent developer. If you just send in a CV and we don't know who you are and we've not interacted with you, the chances of you being hired are almost zero, because hiring is the most important thing we do. We're not going to take risks on unknowns. I think this will be the last question that we take, which is going to be about, I think, hot reload, and can we get that as soon as possible?
Again, a massive feature. It's a lot of work, hot reload. I mean, I know in theory how it's done, but I'm sure there are a lot of gotchas there. I'm guessing unlikely that we'd have hot reload anytime soon, unless we decided that it was going to be the part of some sort of paid package, because yeah, it's a lot of work.
By the way, if you're not using XAML and you're using C# or one of the Fluent API things that exist, Fluent markup, I believe it actually already works, and that it's only a problem once you're using XAML. And then obviously there's the dev tools, which allows you to change things on the fly in the live application and see how styling and changing properties. That's one of the alternatives for now.
Yeah, I guess the question is slightly unclear. I was assuming it meant editing the XAML in your editor in Visual
okay, yeah.
Whatever, that being updated in a running app. This is what I was talking about. That's a lot of work.
All right. Well, I think that's it for this month. Apologies for not having this last month. We were a bit busy with V11, but this will be a monthly regular thing. We're not sure on the time, so we were a little later today than the previous call. We want to try and get this open to as many people as possible. So let us know if this is not a good time for you. If you're watching this on the recorded video, comment what time zone you're in, so that we know how to adjust the next one. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
Till next time. Bye.
Bye.